Here's to the grind. We'll tear it down. There's nothing they can never do to take down our crown. And we will pop them down and make drum sound. There's something inside for us thinking around. Now watch the exhale. We fight to the death. Yeah, we fight to the death. We fight to the death. We fight to the death.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to round one of the Osiris League Grand Prix 2025. My name is Brian Koo. I am very happy to be sharing this monumentous occasion with all of you and with my man in Amsterdam, Plato Gaming. Plato, how's it going, buddy?
How's it going, Brian? Thank you so much for hosting alongside me. This should be super fun. Grand Prix round one, both the international server, Chinese server, clashing it out in this first game we're casting today.
Yeah, the Grand Prix is a very unique event where you have to play very well in the normal Osiris League to qualify for this, but once you qualify, you get a souped up account where you are given every commander, you are given the best equipment and some excellent legendary armaments that have the best inscriptions on them. And you are also given an absolute ton of troops where all these players on every team will have roughly, I think it's like 450 million power, but we'll check that once we get in the game. They have a ton of troops. There's going to be no need to heal. And like you said, Plato, we are kicking this off with an international team against a Chinese team. This is an event where the two servers merge into a double elimination 16-team bracket. And today we are going to be watching 60GT against 261K. Plato, you are a member of 60GT, and what can you tell me about this team and where they're at and what their hopes and dreams are for this event?
Yeah, I mean, 60GT, is a known name and known kingdom for a lot of people in the international server, a lot of people in general in Rise of Kingdoms, kind of one of the poster childs when it comes to Rise of Kingdoms. Kingdoms up there with the 1093s of the world as well. And, 60GT, last Grand Prix did not do that well. They got eliminated in the second round in the lower bracket against 2489. The international server in general didn't do that well last Grand Prix, pretty much being dominated by the Chinese server outside of 93T. I think this Grand Prix, and especially this first game against the Chinese server, will be a good litmus test to see if the international server has improved since last season, especially with 60GT faltering in last season's Osiris League, where actually 60GT were not the ones that won the realm. It was actually the sister team, 60MX. So the composition of this current iteration of 60GT is actually primarily most of the players that won it for 1960 in 60MX. It's just they renamed the team for this Grand Prix into 60GT. I believe it's around 20 players from the original MX team, and then the rest of the players are from the GT team, and I believe there's around 2 players from 606 as well, composing all of 1960 and the 60GT team that we're going to be watching today. They have been practicing a lot. There has been a lot of practice, especially with the new practice tools. You're able to, practice in this new server with the accounts you're going to be playing with in the Grand Prix. There's been a lot of practice for this 1960 team, and we'll have to see what happens and how they'll start off their Grand Prix.
Yeah, this is a litmus test is a great way to describe this match that we have today. It's a litmus test not only for GT to see where they are at as a team with this somewhat new kingdom here. Some players and leaders have left. Players like Plato have been loyal to the transition and stayed. So it's a litmus test for GT, but it's also a litmus test for all of us watching, wondering how the international server stacks up against the Chinese server. Their opponents today are 261K, which is not the strongest Chinese team by any stretch of the imagination. They were a team that made it through the qualifiers. They finished top 4 in their realm in Osiris League, and then won their pool in the qualifier to make it to this bracket. They were also in the Grand Prix last season, and they finished in the top 16 last season. So they more than likely lost to other Chinese teams along the way in last year's Grand Prix. So it's not the stiffest test for GT that has ever existed, but, you know, it's still a Chinese team, and at the very least, we don't know what to expect. It's possible that GT has practiced against some of these Chinese teams. Did you hear anything about who's GT's practicing against, and whether they've, you know, dipped their toes in playing against the other server?
I think they've definitely played against some of the other server, but a lot of, you know, some of the top teams in the international server I know have been crossing paths here and there, you know, playing scrim brackets of like 3 games in a day. So it's definitely been a very busy time for the Grand Prix teams, especially with Supreme Strife going on, and a lot of people in Supreme Strife are in the Grand Prix, and been a lot of playing Rise of Kingdoms for these players. But I'm sure a lot of these players, especially in 60 GT, I mean, this is going to be one of those rare times where it's a fresh slate. This is a new GT. This is a new look, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they perform.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see this new GT in action. They've had a lot of success in Strife, which has certainly helped them round into form for this event. And let's go ahead and jump into the match. We've got only a couple of minutes to go. And here we are. You can see that we've got about 2 minutes to go. GT is just about fully teleported in. Interesting, look at this. Seawill, the former leader of GT, part of this team. I am already seeing some interesting members of this GT team. Addy versus Hasta here as well. So the former player Addy Lloyd from 960 also on this team. And let's see who else is working here. We've got Cortex. Cortex is all with you in Amsterdam. Were you guys going for a bike ride earlier today? I mean, did Cortex drop his bike and jump into this match?
We were biking earlier today, and he is all suited up, ready to go. It's been really interesting being in the meetup during all these events, just seeing all these players continue to play the game during the meetup yesterday, maybe for Supreme Stripe, and this time for Grand Prix. So we'll have to see how they perform while also being here.
Yeah, from Plato's pregame research, we got word that it's likely going to be Mamer who is going to be the shot caller today. We'll see when the skills start to get cast, whether it's Mamer doing it or Cortex. And I believe Papa Boba is also pretty heavily involved. He's their main Ark carrier. And then over on the red team, we have got the Chinese team of 261K here. And they are going to be a formidable opponent for GT. We didn't get into this in the pregame, but they have different skills. They definitely use different skills than GT does. They have had Master Strategy on their bar every week. They've had To the Death on their bar every week. And they also use Stocking Up a couple of times during this event. So, you know, some different strategies that 261K will throw at GT here. But we'll see. We're going to find out how they play at the same time as GT, because this match is about to kick off. Gates are opening. Plato, anything you expect to see right off the bat?
The thing about the Chinese server is that for a lot of people, they're an anomaly. I think this time the international teams, because they've scrimmed the Chinese server, they've been able to watch some of their games. It won't be too much of a surprise. But from what I remember last Grand Prix is that they played a lot more loose. They did a lot more strategies that are not standard in the international server. You know, last season, international server, they had this standard, okay, we go mid at this time. It's kind of like a scripted game. This time, with all the changes, with all the new skills that we had this last Osiris League, now teams can go for the building game. Now teams could go for middle. There's kind of this mix. And I'm really interested to see which of the two strategies each team decides to go. If it's going to be a null mark for these buildings early on, and you're going to stack the middle, or you're going to try to go middle and get the arcs that way and get the win that way, we'll have to see what these teams decide to do.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that there's just more fluidity and more flexibility in terms of how teams approach an arc match, what strategy they employ. You know, Chinese teams last season were very gathering driven and also played the mid quite well, and they just sort of controlled the pace of the match. But this year there are different strategies that can be thrown at you. And, you know, the stocking up skill, we have certainly seen the stocking up skill be very strong in the Grand Prix qualifiers, where teams have been able to use stocking up multiple times in the match and cast more than 10 points of skills. And so it just feels a little bit dangerous to me that 261K has been using stocking up where GT has not been. But we'll see how this one goes. Any thoughts out off the jump in terms of the sentries, in terms of how both teams are rolling out?
It's been looking pretty standard. I've seen some pretty crazy plays from the Chinese server where they try to go for the obelisk. 60 GT lose an obelisk in Osiris League last season, which is how they got knocked out. But this time it looks pretty standard from what I see. But for those that don't know what stocking up is, I believe that's a skill where you get energy from provisions, if I remember correctly. So what that allows you to do is that when you bring back your provisioners, you could actually pop an extra skill. So if you're fighting a mid fight, usually the cap is 10 points, but you could use your skill points, bring back your provisioners, and then get more skill points so that you could have, 12 points, 13 points for middle, allowing you to have that extra advantage. So that's why stocking up can be that difference maker for a mid fight, and that mid fight could be the difference maker for the game.
Yeah, stocking up is a very powerful skill. It does add a little bit of extra micromanagement, where you have to have players gathering throughout the game. They have to stagger when they turn in their resources, so you get the points at the right time before mid. What's nice about stocking up in the Grand Prix is that everyone has 5 sets of gathering gear and 5 sets of gathering inscriptions, and so one player can do all of the gathering for a team, and that makes it easier to micromanage stocking up. But we are getting underway here. Both teams, well, let's look at the top side here, where GT off to a very defensive start here. We normally see the team in blue approaching this desert altar early on, but GT is, it doesn't look like they are serious about attacking this desert altar. They are just sort of balling up and waiting. And similar on the bottom, on the top side, excuse me, but you can see that 261K at least wants to take this fight, and they will contest this desert altar. Plato, any thoughts about these early desert altar fights, whether they're worthwhile, and what teams should be doing?
Yeah, both teams playing very passively here. Even the attack of 261K on 60 GT's desert altar, they didn't go dive the desert altar. They just kind of, 60 GT did the smart thing, which was to put the murder ball in front of the desert altar. I think both sides right now are just trying to test the waters, see how each side will perform, see how each side will react to their plays. It does look like, there are some marches around the desert altar of 60 GT. They should be able to get that first rotation in. But yeah, the murder ball is getting absolutely wiped up here for 60 GT, which is a good sign for them. And now it's going to be really interesting to see how they decide to bring this murder ball. Usually what teams do is they bring the murder ball and swing it all the way over to the sky altar, and it looks like that's going to be the case for 60 GT, and a lot of these marches are relatively healthy. 261K, I believe, are in a tempo disadvantage due to the fact that their murder ball kind of got wiped on the top side.
Yeah, I said that 60 GT didn't seem serious about attacking the enemy desert altar, but I cast a curse right off the bat here, because 60 GT, they went in a little bit late, but they went in very strong at this desert altar, and they have wiped 261K at their desert altar, and you know they've got about 2 minutes left to hold this building and get first occupation. You get a very nice 750 points for first occupation. They've got the Hera YSS garrison in there, and now GT has a choice. Do they stay or do they go? Are they going to kill off their marches? Look at this player, Pluma Chan. They've got one of their marches has only 45K. I think I saw one with 349 troops. I mean, Plato, I understand trying to hold this building, but with 349 troops, I think you just run this one down, right?
Yeah, especially since these are those big accounts, you don't really need to go back home or try to save troops or anything. You definitely want to reset your marches. But this has been a dominant opening from 60GT. You know that passive opening where we were saying the 60GT might not be trying to attack the desert altar? I really feel like that confused 261K. They're like, where are the marches? Start streaming one by one into 60GT's murder ball, and from there, this bottom side of the map has been wraps. The murder ball is still in front of the 261K cities, and 60GT is not doing too bad of a job. There's 1 minute left until this desert altar gets the first occupation points, and right now 60GT is in the driver's seat of this game.
Yeah, you know, with this attack on the desert altar, they were kind of just disciplined, right? They just waited for everyone to get there before they went in, which makes plenty of sense. And it's working out very well for GT. Now, 261K did get a rally off relatively quickly. They did fill this rally up, or close to fill up the Attila Subutai rally here. But Pluma Chan and the other players who were waiting, they are ready to swarm this thing down. I mean, look at how disciplined GT is off the bat. They had half their players delaying the murder ball, and then they had their other half of their players waiting at this building just to swarm down the rally, right? Different players in the field who survived had different responsibilities, and now they just need 30 more seconds. They need to hold this building for 30 more seconds, and they will, or excuse me, 4 more seconds, and they will get first occupation. Looks like GT is going to lock this in. You can see that GT's score just ballooned up with that capture. And let's quickly check on the Sky Altar. It looks like, I'm not sure if GT got first occupation on the Sky Altar or not. I'm guessing no.
They did not. They did not. 261K were able to at least deny the first occupation from the Sky Altar. But you know what, 60GT, you'll take it. You'll take the extra first occupation from that desert altar. And now I feel like they have that tempo advantage where you can see there's a lot of marches around both the desert and Sky Altar of 261K. Kind of in no man's land. You're half health perhaps, or you're definitely not fully healthy. Now, do you start rotating to an enemy structure? But there's 3 minutes, 20 seconds until Ark spawns. You won't be relevant until Ark. You won't be relevant for that Ark spawn if you try to attack a structure. But then if you rotate mid, you're not gonna, be in the best shape to fight. So a lot of these marches that we're seeing are taking the walk of shame back home. And I think 60GT should have a tempo advantage if they decide to go for this Ark.
Yeah, really interesting stuff here. You pointed out that some of these marches were going to be late to mid. They knew they were going to be late, so they tried to run home fast, and that left the desert altar empty. And so GT took this thing right back. You can see the Eleanor, who was coming here to be the garrison, she now has to swarm down this QSH. Another march did get in here. I saw Maimer turn around and throw a march in here as well. You've got a double C Caesar also swarming this thing down. So the garrison and the filler had to swarm the desert altar back for 261K, just delaying their points generation even longer. So a very good start for GT here as both teams mobilize to middle, and we have got 2 minutes to go before this first mid fight. Plato, what are you seeing in terms of the rotation towards mid?
This is a really interesting outcome where a lot of these fights, especially with no mark that has been, introduced into the game, you don't really see both teams go all in for middle. These two teams, they definitely have a lot of resources for this mid fight. This is classic Ark of Osiris. This is like season 1, 2, 3. Ark spawns, I go mid. Both teams look very confident in their open fielding abilities. I will say 60GT, they have about a 2.2k lead. So they're pretty comfortable with the lead that they're able to gain, especially with that extra Desert Altar flip, denying that 300 points that would have been generated for 261k because of the 2 minutes it takes for them to recapture that structure and before that structure starts generating points for them. But I think that 60GT should be favored, but there are still a lot of troops and both sides pouring in. I think this is going to be a pretty late arc fight, rather. So we'll have to see if 261k will be able to kind of, remedy the mistakes that happened in the Desert Altar fights earlier.
Yeah, I would say a mixed assessment here of 261k's mid approach. They certainly did get to the temple first, which is a slight advantage, but we can see that the vision is much stronger on GT's side here. GT has vision protecting their own ball, and they have vision on the other side. Finally, now 261k dropping a sentry right at the temple, and GT getting ready to approach here, casting Desert Storm, and just chunking a lot of value against 261k. 261k countering with their own Desert Storm. Arc spawning in only 15 seconds here. And here we go, to the death from both teams. Mirrored skills here. No stocking up for this fight. It is just 1v1, same skills, similar numbers. And what do you think, Plato? Who is going to pull this one off?
I think it'll come down to the Arc carry. The open field fight looks like it's going 60GT's way, and the Arc is as well. Popa Boba, the free-to-play god himself in 60GT, the only free-to-play in 60GT currently, coming up with that Arc, being able to click it a little bit faster, and the murder ball is looking really blue.
Yeah, we now see the sad face train from 261k here. They had a decent opening where both teams were trading sad faces, but now all the sad faces are on the red side as 60GT cleans up this first mid fight. 60GT off to a great start. Papa Boba just chilling here, just enjoying the scenery of this. He's just kind of looking at his own banner on the side of this Arc here from MX. But yeah, very nice Arc win for GT right off the bat. King Bob in the chat saying GT still cooking in mid. OT Supernova saying GT is doing great. We did get a very good crowd for this match. Everyone excited to watch GT, one of the absolute legendary teams in Rise of Kingdoms, and they are playing really, really good here. I mean,
yeah, this has been a great opening from 60GT. Kind of the opening to really boost the confidence of the team and show that their hard work has been paying off. Now, the game's not over. There's still 42 minutes left. This is the first arc. This is the arc that is worth the least. But I will say they have gained quite the point lead for themselves. They're about 2.6k up just from structures alone. And then on top of that, they will have an extra 3k from the arc. That's 5.6k ahead currently of their opponents. Now, Brian, do you think they'll hold this arc, or do you think that they'll try to capture it and run it back for a second arc fight?
That's a really interesting question here. I'm trying to remember how GT play. It's been a while since we watched GT play because it was the regular Osiris League when they last competed. They have been a strong mid team, but not necessarily like the best mid team, right? If we just compare them to some of the other international teams like Beer, and maybe you even throw 489 in that mix, GT has not necessarily been like the best mid team. And so in that sense, I feel like they are probably going to lean on side play a bit. And also historically, GT has been like a dominant side play team. So in that sense, you hold it, right? In that sense, you hold the arc so you have enough skill points to cast No March. If I had to bet on this, I would bet on them holding the arc for quite a while, actually. But, you know, they
Yeah,
do play more mids than 261K does historically.
I tend to agree with you, especially because of how dominant that first mid fight is. But it's not like they've been struggling in the building game either. I feel like if you increase the amount of arcs that are in the game, it kind of increases the variance in the game as well. Kind of keeping the points low by keeping the amount of arcs low means that the occupation score and potentially the gathering score will be worth more. So in this case, when you have full control of, they just took the Desert Altar of 261K. The Desert Altar has been half painted red, half painted blue. It's kind of, you know, a striped color throughout this game. And I will say that to decrease variance, if you believe in your gatherers, if you believe in your building game, why not just take a relaxing, you know, couple of minutes here and just play the structure game and wait for that second and last arc fight.
Yeah, I think that what GT does with their arcs in this game could potentially tell us a bit about how they feel about their mid play. Because we know that a team like Beer is like very, very good mid. And potentially some of the top Chinese teams are also very, very good mid. And if that's the case, if GT feels like they're not, you know, elite tier mid play in this Grand Prix, then they probably want to work on their side play. Now, obviously they can throw some misdirection here, right? They can just like, instead of practicing, they can, you know, misdirect everybody and make people think that they're going to play a certain way in the future. But like, if we just take GT at face value, I think that if they run a lot of mids, if they return this arc quickly, it means that they are confident in their mid play and they want to play, you know, high variance, high arc games. If they hold it and cast No March, it means that they're going to be more of a side play team. But we also don't want to like overreact too much because, you know, they have a good control of this match and they don't want to give everything away.
Yeah.
One question for you, Plato. I noticed that the person casting the skills here is Jockle X Heat. Do you know anything about this player? Anything you can tell us there?
Yeah, I mean, they're also one of the MX leaders. I think, you know, there's a lot of, the way that most art teams are structured is that there's lane leads on each side. So they're definitely one of the leaders in MX. But yeah, I feel like, as you were talking about, 60GT, they don't really want to give up too much. It's going to be really interesting to see how they continue to play this game out. They are fully in control currently with 38 minutes to go. But there is a world where 261K can come back into this game. Like, what if you were 261K, Brian? Like, how would you play this out? Like, what's your game plan from here?
Oh, Plato, man, you are a tricky cat, dude, because, you know, I was going to ask you the questions this week, and I was all set at some point in this match to ask you the toughest question of all, the question you always ask me: how does the team that is losing this entire match turn things around?
I beat you to it.
Yeah, you beat me to it like real bad there. I got hardcore outplayed. But listen, I mean, certainly they're doing it right now. Like, we have to note that 261K has taken the enemy's Desert Altar, and they've got all of their own structures back at the moment. Occupation score is dead even for now, but in 40 seconds, it does look like 261K will have the advantage. They need to do what GT did for the first 20 minutes, which is just play very, very solid. Little improvements in certain situations can give you the edge. GT had a good approach at the beginning of the match, and that allowed them to take the enemy Desert Altar. You know, we see here that Leroy Bunny's rally was probably full. Like, this is the kind of thing you have to do. You have to have full rallies that are getting full value for the wait time, and you're getting the reinforcements here from GT on this building. And so even though there's not a ton of swarm here, you can see that Leroy Bunny's rally is heavily, heavily pressuring this Desert Altar, trying to get it back. I think that's what 261K has to do. They just have to be detail-oriented. Their players have to really stick to the game plan. And I also think they probably have to throw stocking up in there to get an advantage for mid. I don't know how did I do on that answer?
That was pretty good, man. I will say that there is a really interesting note that neither team has used their no mark yet. There's been no mark used, no building game to be focused on in terms of skills. This has all been a natural point lead by 60GT. And that really makes me wonder if there's going to be a big mid fight for the second round. If both teams are saving up all their skill points yet again to run it back, you could see that energetic being used by 261K. Probably going to be mirrored here by 60GT. But it's been really interesting that the only skills that have been used have been energetic and the skills middle. There hasn't been any other skills such as the stocking up you're referring to or the no mark, which teams usually do. And teams usually use no mark to kind of, if you're behind, to slowly come back and make that point differential.
Yeah, we just saw the energetic from 261K get used. It looks like you're maybe 10 or so seconds ahead of me here. But, you know, I think that GT, when you hold the Ark, it's so valuable to hold the Ark. And as we watch 261K here very swiftly take back their Sky Altar, one of the advantages of holding the Ark is that you can almost control... You freeze the enemy from using their skills. Like, we see that 261K is getting points back faster than GT. They've used energetic. They're more confident in their points generation. But, like, they can't cast no mark because what happens is that if they cast no mark right now, GT can just return the Ark and have a lot more points for the next Ark.
Yeah.
You know, that advantage doesn't exist forever because at a certain point... 261K's bar, the red team's bar, is going to max out, and then they can cast no mark and get almost all those points back before the next Ark fight. You know, they have 8 minutes to regenerate it. But for now, in this mid period between Arks, yeah, 261K was just not able to use no mark because they were worried that GT would do a quick return. I do think at this point, though, 261K, they probably should have cast no mark already if they had the 6 points, because they're just down so much, and you know, you have to maybe put GT on the back foot a little bit, I think, and you have to take risks. It would have been a risk for 261K to cast no mark, but I think that's a risk they probably needed to take.
Yeah, I feel like this game, if you've been looking at the structures, there has been flips on both sides, but I think 60GT has been more in control and flipping more of the structures than 261K. And I think that could be a major difference maker in this, especially with that first occupation scored on 261K's Desert Altar by 60GT. I mean, that was that was like a 1.5K swing, because that's 750 points, I believe, to 60GT, and then 750 points taken away from 261K. So that'd be yeah, so it's just like that compounding on top of the fact that they've been slowly but surely chipped, like the structures have been chipped away at, has been flipped. They haven't been generating points on it fully. And the fact that they lost their Ark is the reason why they're in this hole now. But there is still half the game left. There are still going to be more and more valuable Arks. So there's 3 minutes, 10 seconds until this Ark will despawn, and then there'll be another 8 minutes until the next Ark spawn. So there is going to be a time frame for 261K. If they do win that next mid fight, they can force a third Ark. But yeah, right now it's kind of that lull, it's kind of that state where each team is just waiting for the next Ark fight, and you could tell because there's so many provisioners out there just trying to get the extra points where they can.
Yeah, pretty good play by GT here. We saw them defend at their Sky Altar, and some of the marches that got to that fight late, they just rotated over here to the Desert Altar. They did a little bit of defense, and then they moved around the mountainside to play offense here as Showtek's Attila Subutai rally does pressure this Eleanor. And so, you know, this match has been... It's fairly close. Like you said, neither team is flipping too many buildings here. So the match is pretty close. But what I'm seeing from GT is partly they are just in their comfort zone, right? Like, historically, GT, because they had the strongest accounts in the game, the best equipment, the best inscriptions, they played defense on the sides, and they were just like really comfortably playing defense on a lot of these buildings. They would have matches where they didn't lose a single building the whole time. And it's almost like they're doing that in this match as well. They're not being like crazy aggressive or anything like that. They're just playing solid defense and then trying to, you know, make that transition towards offense. We see that here the attack did not work, but you know, it put good pressure on 261K, right? Like all these 261K marches have to now refresh. It maybe disrupts 261K's flow a little bit, whereas like all of GT died at the same time. They can all come back out at the same time as well. Here's Maimer, you know, heading right back to that spot. These players, you know, they're just chilling on defense. They're already back for this next 261K attack. So this is just like a comfy flow for GT, and that's something that they have leaned on in the past. I have to note that Seawill is part of this team. The former leader of GT is part of this team. Plato, did you know that Seawill was going to be on this team, and what impact do you think he is having on this team?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this GT team is a lot of players that have, you know, left GT or went to a lower seed or went to a different kingdom, just, you know, reconvening. And yeah, it's really interesting to see all these players, you know, come back and get to work together again. And I feel like they've been doing really, really well. I think last Grand Prix was kind of a bad taste in 60GT's mouth, where I believe they didn't win a single game. They lost in the second round. Now poised to win that first game in this this Grand Prix, trying to make it far and make it back to the finals, which they're able to do in 2023. And yeah, so the 60GT team has been playing super well. I feel like their pace has been a lot better compared to 261K. They've been able to kind of take control, take the reins around the map as the Ark has been captured here. So there will be 7 minutes until that next Ark fight, and this is where 261K have to start turning it on. They have to start, you know, turning on the skill switch here, as you know, they've taken the desert altar, they're attacking the sky altar, and we'll have to see if 261K could continue this momentum.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Neither team cast no mark. That is very, very interesting. Not something you see all that often, and maybe a bit of a missed opportunity for 261K to have used stocking up perhaps at the end of that first Ark fight and get some points really fast and cast no mark in the middle. I think if they had done that, they would have had enough time to rebuild their bar. As it is, we expect both teams to have a full 10-point bar for this next mid fight, and the question is whether stocking up gets used by some of these gatherers on 261K here. Have you taken a look at the gathering, whether one team you know, whether 261K has a bunch of gatherers out and stuff like that?
I actually think 60GT has been gathering more than 261K, which is, you know, credit to them. That's exactly what we're talking about. The comfort for 60GT is that if they make the game 2 arcs long, they're winning the occupation game. If they just win the provisioning game, they should be able to win off those 2 advantages alone. And since they already got the arc, and if there's only one more arc, then that would mean that there would only be a 500-point differential between arcs. So they're just trying to do that as much as possible. As I believe we just saw 261K talking about no mark. They just use no mark on their side.
Yep, no mark being used by 261K here. This is pretty good timing for them too, right? They can use no mark now, and then I think can expect them to use stocking up here in the next few minutes. And then that stocking up will give them the points they need to compete for the next mid. So this is the high risk move that 261K is taking. They're going to use no mark 6 minutes before the second mid, and then hope that they can regenerate enough points to compete for that second mid. They have to do both. They have to get value from this no mark and then hit the, you know, and then also win the second mid. You can see that this was their plan, because honestly, this is a really bad time to cast no mark. GT has both of their buildings on the bottom side. They've got the Shrine of Life locked in, and they might even hold it. GT, well, it looks like 261K will get the Shrine of Life back, but they won't get any points on that building for 2 minutes. the Desert Altar here is in deep trouble, where there is no rally on this building right now. So they're using no mark, but look, they're not even outscoring GT. They have no mark on. They're getting 30% more points per minute, and yet GT is outscoring them per minute. Wow, Plato. Not the best no mark we've ever seen.
You know what the counter to no mark is? Taking all your opponent's structures. That's the counter to no mark, and 60GT have just done that. This bottom lane has been domination for 60GT. They have been super clean in this bottom side of the map. Desert Altar has been blue as much as it has been red. So the no mark, as we were talking about, pretty much nullified thus far from 60GT due to the success of taking the Desert Altar as well as taking that Shrine of Life. Now, both structures should be going to 261K soon. So, you know, this has been a good success. Both teams are now probably going to start rotating middle pretty soon here, though.
Yeah, I seem to remember looking at this Desert Altar a lot when 60MX won the Osiris League. This was a very strong side and a strong lane for them, even in the Osiris League. And I do think they have some of the same players here. I think this is Maimer's lane. And so, you know, he's keeping things very well run in that lane. I think we saw Seawell on the bottom side as well. So some very good Ark leads on the GT bottom side. And you can see what happens when you just have like very good shot callers pointing everyone in the right direction, because GT has been very dominant on this bottom side. 3.5 minutes before this second Ark, we are seeing both teams get here very quickly, and GT just casting Energetic here. Pretty good time for Energetic. They are going to get a nice boost when they cast their additional skills, and they will probably have 10 points here for mid as well. Now, interesting to note that GT has not cast no mark, and so if they want to use To the Death again, they would have to use their Time Warp, which, you know, what you really want to do is you want to use No March and To the Death before you use the Time Warp. But I think we will probably not see Time Warp here, because GT has generally had Heaven's Grace on their bar as well. And so, yeah, I'm curious whether they're going to Time Warp into To the Death, or if they're going to do something like Desert Storm plus Heaven's Grace here. Plato, any predictions on the skill usage for both of these teams?
Yeah, I believe 60GT also used Dust Up, so it might be a Dust Up, Desert Storm, Heaven's Grace combination coming out from 60GT. That's been, you know, the classic for them. But yeah, this has been very clean from the 60GT team. 261K, they need this arc. I believe this is a do or die arc for them, because if 60GT take this arc, that's going to be another 3.5K in the bank for them. 261K, that's going to be a tough ask for them to come back from, especially since they've been losing the structure game. It'll be really interesting to see what kind of skills they decide to use. As you were talking about, no mark has been used by them as well as To the Death, so perhaps that is going to be that Time Warp maximum effectiveness, as we were talking about. Time Warp, yet again, for those that don't know, resets the timer on skills. So skills that you were generally only able to use once, such as To the Death, you can actually use twice in a match. So it'll be really interesting to see if 261K decide to use To the Death here against 60GT, especially since, you know, they might not have the exact same amount of points as 60GT do.
You know, one thing I find interesting here is that when everyone is given all of the commanders and all of the gear, no one goes with Siege for the mid fight. Because, you know, we often see some Siege players mid, but when you have everything, nobody's running Siege. And I just think that is notable. For all the players who do bring Siege to mid, are you doing the right thing when you do that? Because when, you know, the leaders control what's happening, they basically say, nobody brings Siege, we don't want that. Pretty interesting, actually. I always felt like Siege was like decent mid, especially in a situation like this where neither team has vision. There are no sentries up, so both teams can only see what's happening at the temple. You see that as soon as 261K gets to the temple, they get a Desert Storm dropped on their head, and then Time Warp from both teams, and it looks like we have a identical skills used once again here. 261K getting 10 points even without stocking up. They used no mark a few minutes ago. They got all 10 points back, and now they are using To the Death. Actually, correction, no Desert Storm from 261K. No Desert Storm from 261K.
That's going to be a big difference maker in this mid-fight. I think that Desert Storm from 60 GT will be, the extra 3 points will really make a difference in this mid-fight, as we see the sad face train coming out from 261K. This is looking like another 60 GT mid-fight win, and it's looking really clean.
Yeah, absolutely dominant performance here from 60 GT. They outmaneuvered their opponents with the skills. They simply used their skills better. 261K went with the no mark, but then the no mark gave them no chance for the mid-fight, Plato. I mean, 60 GT had a full Desert Storm that 261K did not have. That's taking, I think, 20% or off of like half of their marches, 20% health off the top of all of the 261K, of half the 261K marches. That's just a huge amount of damage, and only one team used it, and that's the outcome that you would expect in a situation like this. Pure domination by GT. And Papa Boba's got another carry here. There are some special rewards, I believe, if you are the top Ark carrier in this event. So Papa Boba's making an early attempt at some of those special avatars. But yeah, Plato, is this what you expected out of GT, or were you expecting something different?
I think GT has been practicing a lot. This is also the MX team that won, and kind of the redemption team, the redemption story mixed in with, the best of the best players from the GT team as well. So it's really good to see that they're doing well. Again, we were talking about how this isn't the best team from the Chinese server at all. This is one of the teams that made it through their qualifier stage, similar to 2377 Beer and the rest of the teams that made it through the qualifier stage. So they're definitely one of the best teams, and everyone in this Grand Prix has worked super hard to get here. But this is not the best team of the Chinese server at all, but it's definitely been a great test for 6GT, and we've seen that outside, like, this has been just clean gameplay from them, clean decision making, and it's been, really good to see, and perhaps, some hope for the international server for this Grand Prix this year.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to draw too many conclusions from just one match. I think what's interesting to me as I'm just sort of like thinking about this is that it almost shows like how much skill is required to be a top team, because it's not as if like every Chinese team is on the same level. It's not as if every qualifying Chinese team is just as good as a great international team. Like, the Chinese teams, they have the same requirements. They have to practice as much as a team like GT. They have to have as good of leaders, and they have to have as good of coordination. It's not like they are just getting more reps year round, and then they just are like, the competition level on that server is way better. It's more like worldwide, there's a certain very high level that you can get to if you just do basically everything right. Like, GT has been very crisp in a lot of ways. Like, I'm sure that their open field fighting is very good. Like, the mechanics they're using in the open field are likely very good. They've had good rotations. They haven't overplayed their hand in any sort of way. Like, as we look here at this really strong bottom side, we again see GT just like comfortably cleaning up on defense, and then we're probably going to see them slingshot forward on offense. And then also their skill usage has been very good in this match. We saw that the Jockle is casting most of the skills, but Maimer jumped in there to cast the energetic before that mid fight. They still had all the skill points they needed mid, and then they got a skill point boost based on when they use that energetic. Energetic gives you more skill point regenerations when you cast another skill. So those two skills that GT cast mid, that just gave them a boost for these final 20 minutes. And you see them, they just like use energetic right off cooldown, and we're very comfortable doing that. So yeah, really good stuff from GT here. And like you said, these are the MX players who had slightly weaker accounts than GT, but they still managed to win the Osiris League. So, you know, these, Plot, I don't know what you think, but these might be better actual players than some of the GT people, the old school GT people.
I think it's the best of both worlds, where it's a lot of the top players of MX, it's a lot of the top players from GT. From what I understand, the way that they made up this team was, if you're willing to practice and if you're willing to put the work in, you could be on the team. If you were willing to do it for Osiris League, and you are willing to do it during the off season between Osiris League and Grand Prix, and you're willing to do it during Grand Prix, like, you could be on the team. And they've been taking this very, very seriously. They want to make sure that they could have a good showing here. And they want to have fun. They want to have some fun. I think one of the best things about the MX team that we saw, and I believe Cortex actually posted a video, is the voice call of their team. I believe he posted when they won Osiris League, the voice call of their Osiris League. You'd expect it to be a very calm, very, okay, this guy goes there, this guy goes there. It's actually pretty frantic, and it's kind of fun in the VCs. So I definitely think there's going to be, you know, they're doing some pretty good stuff here in this match. They have been, you know, casting the right skills at the right time. They have been, you know, just they've been omnipresent in this map. I feel like just pressuring the right things at the right time, being able to defend the right structures. And yeah, this has been their biggest advantage so far in this match against 261K. And 261K, I feel like after that opening, they've just been, it's a snowball effect from there. When you don't have that tempo, when you don't have that advantage, you kind of have to do those desperate plays. Like we were talking about with that no mark. We were talking about why didn't they use no mark earlier? This is exactly why. They didn't have enough skills for that second mid fight. They're 3 skill points down. And I think the biggest thing why Desert Storm is used is because it's a 3-point skill. You can go into a mid fight pretty comfortably, not having a full bar, and still be super effective. Use that to the death, which is 6 points, and then that Desert Storm, which is 3, and you just have those 9 points in your bar instead of having to wait for those 10 is really, really effective. And I mean, kudos to 60GT for, you know, a great match thus far.
Yeah, good point about the Desert Storm being a global skill that can affect as many marches as possible. We used to see Total Vision get used for a similar reason, is that there was no cap on how many marches it could affect. For those who are playing in their own Ark matches, something to keep in mind is that there are other skills like War Drums and Mystical Formation that are also very good skills, but the reason you don't see them used in professional play is because they only affect 30 marches. And so in a smaller Ark, those skills work great because you generally don't have more than 30 marches at a mid-fight. But in these arcs, you almost always have more than 30 marches. And so those skills are less desirable, and a skill like Desert Storm really moves up the tier list. Yeah, interesting about Cortex making a video about the voice chat. I love listening to other people's voice chats, so I'm gonna have to go seek out that video for sure. You know, Frantic can do well in, you know, Frantic and having fun can certainly do well in matches like this where you are winning comfortably. It can be a little bit tougher when you are under heavy pressure. So we will see what, you know, GT goes with in the future. You know, one of the things that I think is super interesting is that Seawill is on this team, right? Seawill talked about, you know, wanting to step back from the game. You know, being the leader and king of 1960 is like a huge amount of responsibility. So he migrated to a different kingdom, 1316. He's still playing. But, you know, the thing about Ark that I love is that it's like, it's not that demanding in terms of time. You know, even if you practice every day, you're probably not practicing more than once or twice a day. And that's just a way lower time commitment than, you know, a 2-week straight KVK war or something like that, where it's 8 to 10 hours a day. Thoughts there, Plato? And also I was wondering, like, how often do you play Ark these days?
because we've been casting, I haven't been playing Ark at all. Actually, I gotta get the gold heads back up. Been slacking on the Ark playing, but I mean, it's really fun to see that. I think the motto that we've been saying is, you know, once you're a 60 GT player, especially if you've been there for such a long time like Seawill, you're always going to be a 60 GT player. Like if Seawill would want to come back to 60 GT, I'm sure we'd take him back with open arms. But as we're talking about, he, you know, has he has, you know, new children on the way, so it's been a busy time for him, which is why he stepped down as king. But it's it's good to see him, you know, still play with the team. And as you're talking about, it's not as much as a commitment, and it's pretty fun to still play with your friends. And I think that's what it's one of the fun parts of Grand Prix, where I believe Osiris League is Kingdom Locked to Grand Prix, and even Supreme Strife. If we go back to that, is you could just make a team with whomever you want to, may it be from your kingdom, may it not be from your kingdom. So I think that this GT team have the parts and have the teamwork to go rather far in this Grand Prix. Now the question is, are they going to be able to beat the other teams in the international server and the Chinese server? The one of the biggest I think benefits of the Chinese server is that they're all in one time zone. And from what I've been told in other international server teams is that the hardest thing for them and the biggest disadvantage that they have is that it's hard to find practice time for all of the teammates that are in different time zones and try to align those schedules. So we'll have to see if the off season was enough time and if they were able to polish their play compared to the Chinese servers, where it's a little bit easier to schedule those practices when everyone's on the same time zone.
Yeah, very interesting comment from Lore from 1606 in the chat, saying that most international teams struggle to get more than a session or two in a week. So only practicing 1 or 2 times a week. That's very interesting. I would have thought that international teams practiced more than that. But yeah, like you said, the time zone difficulties do make it challenging to get all 30 players to show up at a certain time. I mean, when you're international, the time is going to be bad for somebody. And then are you really going to make 1 or 2 people wake up at, 3 o'clock in the morning or something to practice 4 or 5 times a week? That's a little bit unreasonable for most people. I did want to say that we missed the gift code earlier in the chat. Rise of Kingdom shared the gift code earlier. Let me go ahead and share that again in the chat. It's I'll read it out. KDNG JK IDXR. You're going to probably want to be in the chat, copy paste that, and grab the gift code. We do thank you all for watching this week 1 Grand Prix match between 60 GT and 261K. Be sure to throw a like on this stream as well. But we do very much appreciate everyone hanging out. The chat has been super active for this match, and we've got a long season to go. Plato just alluded to it. 60 GT, they might be able to get past 261K here, a team that only finished in the top 16 last season, but there is much stiffer competition for GT down the road. I believe, looking at their bracket before the match, I believe they have 2 Chinese teams in their bracket, so they are likely going to play a Chinese team again next week. So things are likely to get more spicy for this GT squad, the revitalized, the return of GT. I mean, we are watching the return of GT here, Plato, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, if you do want to look forward to the matches, if 60 GT were to win today, which is looking rather likely, they're actually going to be versing GY16, which is seen as the best Chinese server team. I believe they're the Chinese server team that won Grand Prix last year. So if there's anything, that's going to be a huge test for them. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens. I'm surprised there's actually a third midfight here, because 60 GT decided to bring the Ark back a bit early. Of course, they are up by as many points as, even if the 261K were to take this Ark, they shouldn't be able to win. But it looks like we're going to have a 4-fun Ark here, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how teams don't necessarily get as much practice as they'd like. So you got to take this practice. Practicing mid to me seems like one of the main things you want to practice. You really want your players to get as good as you possibly can at just clicking these buttons, at zooming out into dot mode and clicking on the right march. Plato, any sense about which marches you target first? I mean, whether it's Ark or KVK, are you going for those archer marches even though QSH is so tanky? Or is that shifting?
Honestly, I feel like, from what I understand, the murder ball is you target the center of the ball. You try to, you know, make sure you switch targets when they're low. And you just want to make sure that you just let the low marches die with AoE. I think it's kind of hard to target a specific march, especially in the chaos, which is mid. But yeah, we're going to start see these murder balls start to collide soon here. And this has been 60GT's turf so far, but we'll have to see. I think 261K actually have the positioning advantage this time. Brian, what do you think of this murder ball fight right now?
Well, it looks like 261K is going to grab the Ark. They used 1 point more in skills. Nope, it's Papa Boba grabbing it again here. We thought it was 261K, but it was just Papa Boba on the enemy side of the temple here grabbing this thing. And so GT grabbing the Ark again, but I do think this is a better fight for 261K. They at least had a maybe slight skill advantage using sneaky tactics rather than dust up. So yeah, I mean, this is why you practice, Plato. This is why you return that third Ark, is because you need these reps. You need this game film to look at later. And if you're GT, you maybe take a look at it and see what happened. I don't know if they're losing for sure here. Pretty close fight still. Still a very close fight. Maybe we see slightly more red marches, but honestly, actually, I think we see more blue marches here. So unless 261K can get a really good pull here, I think eventually these blue marches on the left side of the temple are going to catch up to this Ark and grab it. I don't know, Plato, are you seeing it how I see it, or do you think red gets away with this one?
This has been the closest mid-fight that we've been seeing. I think this shows that 261K is a quality team. The fact that they're able to, if you look at all the marches, everyone's like 1 HP. This is like maybe 15 marches each, just 1 HP, just slapping each other, trying to take away the Ark here. And this has been a very, very close mid-fight. We did talk about how 261K did have the point advantage. I do think 60GT will come away with this Ark, but I mean, this is going to be an extended Ark. I feel like both sides are going to start sending in their second round of reinforcements. And I haven't seen an Ark fight like this in quite some time, where it's kind of inconclusive because both sides kind of just sat faced out at the same time.
Yeah, this is where the shot callers on both teams are like, send everything back mid, send back immediately, send back immediately. If any, and look at this, like using the Ethelfled to speed your way back to the Ark. Look at how this is a game of inches and a game of seconds. It really is this Ethelfled, this fast Ethelfled, who is almost the only 261K march who's able to get to this carrier and slow it down and potentially give red team a chance of getting back into this. I mean, we see both teams doing a full send back to the mid. Just very, very little happening on the sides. No mark now getting cast by GT. They finally busted out the no mark. And boy, if red had gotten back maybe 15 seconds earlier, they might have had a chance to slow this Ark carrier down. But as it is, now all their marches are going to have to walk through the gauntlet. And it's going to be tough. But look at how close this mid-fight was. Not only the first wave, but even this second wave was very close, where if 261K had gone there just 20 seconds faster, this might be a whole different situation. Really good stuff here, Plato.
Yeah, this has been, as you said, a really good test for 60GT. 261K, I mean, kudos to them, because this was really dominant for 60GT, but at the same time, they had their moments. They had this chance to really, take that Ark. They had a chance where they were like neck and neck in terms of skills. But I actually think that the Ark carrier was pretty clutch for 60GT. If I remember correctly, Papa Papa Bobo actually got the first pull there. I feel like if 261K were able to get that first pull, they would have been able to bring it closer to their side, and perhaps that could have been a difference maker where their reinforcements would have been able to reinforce that middle fight before 60GT. But it's all, sometimes you just have to click faster, and Papa Boba has just been that person today. And yeah, they were able to capture the Ark. I believe they're starting to bring it towards the outpost, and yeah, this should be wraps for the game.
Yeah, that's going to be curtains on this one. Really interesting that in the actual Osiris League 261K, they went with different skills. They had master strategy on their bar every single match in the Osiris League. Imagine if instead of sneaky tactics, well, it's tough because they needed the sneaky tactics because they used the Desert Storm and the sneaky tactics for that mid fight. But boy, master strategy, let's just pretend that they had unlimited skill points. Master strategy would have been amazing to warp their players back quickly to this second Ark fight. You just have to think about the permutations of how these matches flow. In this situation where like it was all about getting back to mid, a skill like master strategy is like insanely strong. But you have to find space on the bar for it, and yeah, with No March and Time Warp and Energetic, there's just not much space left for some of these boutique skills that we'd love to see. But 1 minute left here in the match, Plato. Yeah, what are you thinking here as we watch GT storm the Desert Altar again here on the bottom side?
Yeah, I mean, it's been super impressive by 1960 60GT. A good showing from them and a good showing from the international server. 261K, they did really well as well. I'm curious to see how they'll do in the lower bracket. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see 60GT versus GY16 next week.
Yeah, that's going to be a great match. GT was really strong on this bottom side. Top side, not quite as dominant, I would say. If anything, it was the Desert Altar up here got flipped just as much as GT flipped the Sky Altar. But a very strong performance for GT here in the first week of the Osiris League, winning 3 out of 3 arcs. And let's see now who is the MVP of this match. I mean, unofficially, I'd say it's Papa Boba, but it's going to be Leroy Bunny getting the MVP for GT as 60GT beats 261K, 49,000 points to just under 33,000 points. A very strong performance from GT here, dominating the arc score, doing very well on occupation. And even when you look at the total kills here, they had a very good ratio compared to their opponents. Plato, as we look through these stats, any final thoughts on this match?
I think this was a really good test for 60GT. To get their feet wet to play against a Chinese server team on the main stage in this round 1 of the Grand Prix. Now it's going to be really interesting to see where they go from here. They're going to be versing another Chinese server team. We'll probably be looking at the bracket pretty quickly here, Brian, as we look through the rest of the results. GY16 is the reigning Grand Prix champions versing 60GT, which seem really strong. That's going to be really interesting to see next week, and we'll have to see what happens then.
Yeah, let's see what we can pull up as far as the bracket and the results so far. Let's see, so we just click on the matches to see the results. Let's take a look here. This is the bracket that we are looking at. 60GT here at the top of the bracket. As you mentioned, GY16 winning their match against another Chinese team, VVRS. That is going to be the top part of this bracket. And let's go through these other matches, Plato. And yeah, this is going to be interesting, actually. I don't know how these other matches turned out here. Again, here, 2 Chinese teams, OW versus 62. A pretty close match here, but 62 MI getting the win in this one. And now, who are they going to play? 93T against 2377. Plato, any predictions on this, or are you cheating here?
I did not see this. Was it 93T? Let's see.
I would bet on 93T as well here. Yep, a solid win for 93T. Yeah, similar score to actually we see now that the GT was honestly quite dominant in their match. GT so far has the most dominant outcome, but 93T advancing as well, and now 45Q versus DQ39. I know I put most of my Oryx on 45Q. Let's see how this one turned out. Yeah, 45Q getting a strong win against DQ39. Gamblers rejoice on that one. And now here we got 21YL against 9558. Again, two Chinese teams here. And it is 21YL, a team that advanced quite far last season. They do advance in the winners bracket. Now here in the bottom, we've got 4 international teams here in this bottom part of the bracket. NP39, the winners of Sobek, they went against Beer. And it is Beer winning a pretty close match here against NP39. So, Beer was the favorite in this match. Beer does advance, but a pretty strong performance here by NP39. And now one of the marquee matchups of the day, 489 versus 748. Again, Plato, any predictions on this one?
Oh man, this is a tough one.
Yeah, this is a good one.
I would predict 489.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think 489 is going to win this one. I think they're probably pretty strong in Grand Prix this season. Okay. Well, now.
Wow.
748W. Nice. Okay. It's interesting. 748W did very well in the Grand Prix last season. They were the international team that did the second best. 93T obviously did very well, finishing in the top 4, but it was really 748W that at least had a respectable finish in this event. And you can see here that that was not a fluke. That was not a fluke. 748 pulling a really nice win against 489 there. Wow. That is pretty interesting. Looks like this bracket will get filled out later. So obviously the teams that lost, they will move down here to the lower bracket and they will be fighting for their tournament lives. The teams that advanced will play each other next week. We have some great matches next week, including Beer against 748W and GT versus GY16. Some really good matches this week, some great matches next week, and Plato and I will be here for the great action. Thank you all for watching. Plato, any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
This is the best of the best. This is where all of the top teams are from both the Chinese server and international server. And we have seen some crazy matches this week. And next week, it's just going to get even crazier and crazier and crazier.
Thank you all for watching. Enjoy your Sunday and have a great week. See you later.
Peace.